In this video, we're going to go over how to make a top-down game in UE5. We are using the PaperZD plugin. You can find it on the Epic Marketplace. Starting off, we're creating a new project. Go to the Games tab. Start with either Blueprint or C++. Doesn't really matter, just depends on your project. If you plan on using scripts in your project, I'm going to choose C++. Next, target platform desktop. Quality preset scalable, that's just what I choose. No starter content, we won't need that for this project. The first thing we could do here is create a new level. Right-click the content browser, then click level. Name the level whatever you like. I named mine Playground. Organization is important, so I'm just creating a folder on where sprites will go. Let's go to Edit, Project Settings. In the search bar, go ahead and search anti-aliasing. For pixel art, make sure you have FXAA on. Next, search for auto exposure. Make sure that is unchecked. A quick tip, you can change the folder color by right-clicking the folder, set color. I like to do this so I can color code my folders and find things faster. Really quick, I'm going to create another folder for the blueprints. And I'm going to just make it a nice blue to match the color of the blueprints. Now we're going to import sprites. Go ahead and drag and drop from wherever folder, whatever sprites you're going to use for your main character. Right click, Sprite Actions, apply Paper 2D. Now you're going to right click it again, Sprite Actions, and extract sprites. Once you get this box to appear, you're going to click on Sprite Extract method, change that from auto to grid. What that's going to do is it's going to prevent any miscalculated boxes from your sprite. If you could see here, some are connected, some are separated, so you just want it all to be uniform so the animations are smooth. Once you've done that, make the cell width and height the size of your sprites. You can also divide by how many frames there are. So if you don't know exactly how big and wide the sprite is, what you can do is look at a sprite or how many frames. So you can see there's 4 frames per animation, so you just divide the width by 4 and the length by 4, since it's 4 by 4, and then you have a perfect measured out grid for you. In this specific case, my width is 16 and my height is 32, and if you're using this, that's what you'll use as well. After that, just hit extract. Now you see you'll have a bunch of sprites ready to go, and now at this point we'll be making the flipbooks to start our animation process. So first we're going to create our idle animation. All you'll do is right click, create flipbook. Once you create flipbook, you'll just name it to FB idle down, since he's facing down. In this specific case, there's only one sprite for the idle animation. In other cases, you would just highlight and then create a flipbook from that. Then you're going to repeat the process with right, left, and up for him facing upwards. One thing to do here is highlight all of the sprites, right-click, Asset Actions, bulk edit via property matrix. Select all with Shift left-click, type in pivot, and under pivot point, you're going to change it to bottom center, since it's going to be where your feet are. Go ahead and save and close. And now if you double click a sprite, you can see the arrows are at the feet, so that's perfect for what we need for the animation setup. Now we're going to create the walking animation, so you're going to select 1 through 4, highlight all of them at once, and then do create flipbook. Once you name it, we're going to call it FB player walk down, since we're walking down. Once you do that, go ahead and open it up. You see that he's going really fast, and so now we're going to change the frames per second. When deciding your frames per second, it's really up to you and your sprite and how you want it to look, but for this specific sprite, and if you're using it, you can use 6 frames per second, a perfect speed. One thing we could do real quick is highlight all of the flipbooks, right click, Asset Actions, edit via property matrix, and what we could do for all the idle animations is set the frames per second to 1. Since it's not technically playing any frames, it's just nice to have a slow animation in case you want to put something in there later. Now go ahead and repeat the process for the rest of the flipbooks for idle left, right, and up. And you can do the same thing where if you highlight all of them, right click, asset actions, edit via property matrix, and edit them all to 6 frames per second or whatever frames per second you are using for your project. Now we're going to create directionality for the character. Inside the blueprints folder, we're going to create another folder called player. Go ahead and open it up. At this point, we're going to activate the plugin. So go ahead and go to edit, plugins, and then type in paperzd. And then you'll see paperzd come up, make sure it's checked, and then restart now. Once it restarts, you can double check by opening up the plugins again, typing in paperzd. Now you can see it's activated. To set up your default map, go ahead and go into project settings, maps and modes, or you could just type in defaults and then it'll pop up with default map, and you're going to go ahead and change it to the map we created. Now go ahead and open up the level. Go ahead and head into your blueprints folder. Right click content browser, paperzd, create animation source. Go ahead and name it AS_player directionality. Go ahead and open that up. Add new animation sequence, player idle. Double click player idle. Make sure you check multi-directional sequence. And then we have 4 directions. Click the animation graph and have it face up, plug in the up, and then plug in left, right, and down. Now we're going to create the walk animations. Go ahead and push add new animation sequence, name it player walk. Make sure you double click it, turn directionality on, type in 4 for 4 directions. Then do the same exact thing where you plug in each animation corresponding with the direction of the animation's data. If you shift and click, you can preview the animations. The reason why one of them looks a little bit more faded out than the rest is because I changed the material. I will show you how to do that at the end of the video. It's just an extra cosmetic thing, it's not super important. Now we're going to start importing the art to create the level, as well as go over tile maps and how to create those. All you need to do here is just drag and drop, same way you drag and dropped the character 2D sprite sheet. You do the same with the tile map. I included one in this video, or you can import your own, it's up to you. Once they are imported, go ahead and right click, Sprite Actions, create tile set. Open that up, and as you can see on the right, the text size, or the tile size is 32 by 32. That's perfect. That's the dimensions of this tile. But for you, if you have 16 by 16, that's more common than 32 by 32. You would just set that to the correct dimensions that fit your artwork. So now, right click, Sprite Actions, create tile set. Select a tile, add box. Repeat this process for the rest of the tiles. If you have objects with custom polygons that you want to set up, all you do is press add polygon. Then you can draw wherever you want, and then you push enter when you're done. Back in the content browser, create the tile map. So you right click, create tile map. Go ahead and open it up. Here you can draw. So all you do is click the tile and you can draw. The controls, B is brush, Z is to rotate, E is to erase, F to fill, X to flip. You could drag to select multiple sprites at once, and then you can paint it however you like. You can also create a new layer by pressing the plus button. And basically how that will work, if you have objects that you want, like a table or a building that you don't want the player to collide with, you can create that second layer And here I am shortening down the collisions a bit, so all you do is go into tile set, and in the tile editor you can just lower it down by using the arrows. Back in the tile map you can just place down those objects and it'll have that custom collision already ready to go. Once you're done, go ahead and drag it into the editor. I had to make a 90 degrees rotation on X. Scale can be used. I like to scale it up by 4. That's just preference. You can keep it at 1, but it's just easier later on when you're setting up the player. Now go to Content, Blueprint, Player, right click, Blueprint Class. In the drop down menu in all classes, type in Paper ZD, and it's the Paper ZD character. Double click that. Go ahead and name it BP Player. Go ahead and open that up. First thing we could do, Sprite component, set that for the main sprite. As you can see here, if you don't scale the map, the capsule size is a lot bigger than the actual map, and you can scale the capsule. Just preference wise, I'd rather just scale everything else up by 4. It's really up to you. Go ahead and click your sprite. Rotate it on the x-axis by 270 degrees. You can do a little bit of an angle, 277 degrees, if you plan on having it overlap a bit better with flat objects. This value can be changed however works with your character. Next up, we're going to create the spring arm. Make sure that the spring arm is selected. Then we're going to add a camera and make sure it's a child to the spring arm. Rotate the camera how I do here. Create blueprint class. We're going to go to game mode base. You can name it whatever you like, but this is the main game mode for your game. Go ahead and open it up. Go to default pawn class and make sure it's the same name as your BP player. Add, click basic, and then player start. Over on the right, you can go to world settings, game mode override, and GM tut, or whatever you named your game mode. To create a false orthographic look, change the target arm length to 5000 and the camera field of view to 20. Orthographic cameras kind of limit you on shadows and certain materials, so having it on perspective and giving it a false look of orthographic is worth. It all depends on your project as well, but this is my method. At this moment, I realized that the map was upside down for the player, so I clicked the map and then I rotated it 180 degrees. One thing you could do here, if you want shadows, you click the tile map, then you go to materials, and then make sure you do masked lit sprite material. Then it gets dark, and all you do is just add a light. Here I added a directional light. You can change the intensity, the color. This also works for point lights, spotlights, and whatever other type of lights you need. Now we will create the player movement. Right click, input, input mapping context. Name it to IMC player. Here, this is where we will create our mappings for our movement. I'm going to do the standard WASD. First, let's go back to our content browser, right click, input, input action, call it IA move. This is going to be your movement input action. You're going to go into your IA move and you're going to make sure your value type is vector 2D. Open up your IMC player. Under the drop down, put in your IA move. If you press the keyboard, you can just press W to set the keybind. So W, and I'm just gonna add 3 more, ASD, ASD. For the W, we're going to add a modifier, and it's gonna be swizzle input axis value. The A, add a modifier, it's gonna be negate modifier. The S, add a modifier, it's going to be swizzle input axis and negate. And for D, we do not need a modifier. Now we're going to add these input actions into the actual BP player. So go ahead and open up your BP player. Open up the event graph, IA move, add movement input, Control D to duplicate. And if something is not straightened out, all you do is highlight over the whole thing and then press Q, and it auto fixes it and makes it look clean. On the left hand side, we're going to create a variable, so push the plus sign next to variables. Call it isHoldingMove. Then what you can do from here, make sure it's a Boolean. You can drag it out, set, connect it to started, make sure it's true, duplicate it with Control D, connect it with completed, and make sure it's false. Then you can right click the action value, split struct pin, connect the X with X on the first movement input. Then make sure to change your world direction by 1 on X. Next, go ahead and connect your Y to your Y on the next add movement input. And set the world direction to -1 on the Y. Now we're going to create a new variable, so go ahead and push the plus sign, name it Directionality, click on the Boolean, and turn it into a vector 2D. Drag and drop, set, and then connect that to the movement input. In Directionality, split struct pin, go back and connect the X to the X and the Y to the Y. I just like to clean up the code just a little bit. Now we go to event begin play, drag it out, cast to player controller, then drag from the object get controller. After the cast, add a mapping context. From the as player controller, type in enhanced input local player subsystem, mapping context IMC player. Now you can move. Congrats. If you hover over code and press C, you can create a comment, you can change the color, make it look all pretty for organization. Now that you can move around, let's get collision started. Go ahead and open up your tile map again. Here I painted just a little bit more. Here I'm actually going to go back to the player controller and shorten down the radius of the capsule. Move the player up. On the tile map, to correctly detect the collisions, I had to change the separation per layer was -30. And if you have an issue where if you collide with something and the camera zooms in really far, go to player BP player, type in COL and uncheck do collision test, and that should fix your problem. Here I made the capsule 16 by 16. Go to player, go to directionality, right click, paper ZD, NMBP. go ahead and search your player directionality and then make sure that's the parent. ABP player. Go ahead and open it up. Go to the anim graph, set directionality. Really quick, let's go over to the BP player, go to animation component, ABP player on the paper.zd instance class. Then hop back over to your animation component or your ABP player. From there, create a variable. Call it BP player. Click on the drop down, BP player, search for that, and then grab the object reference from BP player. Drag it out and get BP player. Drag from BP player, set directionality, get directionality, plug it into input. Then from the set directionality, drag out, select animation by bool, then grab BP player again, duplicate it, is holding move, drag that into select value, set directionality, then drag out from the false animation, play idle, so when you're not moving, idle is being played. Then from true, play walk. Then go to the event graph of your ABP player. On event init, do cast to BP player. Drag off of that, get owning actor. From BP player, drag it out and set it. And there you go, you have movement. You have done it. This is part 1 of the tutorial series I'm gonna make. Let me know how you think. This is the first tutorial video I've ever made. Yeah, let me know. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.